I'll try to stay close. So I'm Becky Frehse, and I'm a friend of Lynn's and a friend of many of you as well, thankfully. And I'm supposed to introduce things and get this ball rolling. Are we good, Erik? So we're almost. So I'll read through these notes that Lynn gave me. I already said that my name is Becky Frehse. Welcome. It's a good crowd. Hi. Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Please turn off your cell phones. And if they vibrate too much and you giggle, that's okay. The bathrooms are downstairs. Don't get me started. Near the entry doors, it's down there, and then there's what? Oh, there's a bathroom there too. Thank you. Yeah, so you can let everyone know that you're going to the bathroom rather than escaping out the back, right? So how many of you saw my post on Facebook about coming tonight, just out of curiosity? Anybody? No? Yeah? A couple of you? Oh, cool. It worked. Great. If you would like to be on Lynn's email list so you get notices about what's coming up and a reminder that it's happening, there's an email list out on a clipboard in the hallway, and she'd love for you to write legibly and let her know that you're interested. Must be cool. So I'm supposed to let one of the speakers go first before I tell you any more so I don't bore you. So we're going to change the order of appearance around just a little because we want to let our presenters feel the most comfortable. So our first presenter tonight, and this is I'm so excited, really personally excited tonight. I'm going to make a new friend, and I invited an old friend, and I have another old friend. Sorry. He's a current friend. So, Rick Semple, over here. He was born in St. Louis, along with Josephine Baker, T.S. Eliot, Miles Davis, Walker Evans, and Charles Eames. A good place to be from. He was an Army brat and attended 14 schools in 3 countries and 6 states before graduating from college. But you made it. Right? He was a commercial photographer first in LA and then Boston, then briefly in Seattle, selling his piles of equipment in 2001. So he's taught photography at UCLA, the Art Institute of Boston, the University of Idaho, and Cornish College in Seattle. With his wife, Jory, he has for the last 25 years, yay! It's nothing like having a good woman behind you, right? He's been remodeling an older commercial buildings, plural, learning to weld, do roofing, plumbing, and electrical work. He's really pretty much of a mastermind. He's trying to retire and has traveled many times to Mexico, where he finds the colors, crafts, and traditions exciting and engaging, for sure. This was his 3rd time to see the Radish Festival in Oaxaca. Please help me in welcoming Rick to the stage. And remember,
Becky,
this is forward and that's backward. Don't only go forward. No. Well, the light's on this one, but you're right. Uh-oh.
Erik, is it the one on the left or the one on the right?
It's the 2 arrows on your right.
Sorry, I'm wrong. Right.
Okay. So to get back to that video thing?
Yes. You want to start with that?
Yes. Okay. Hi. So this is about the Oaxaca Radish Festival, which is a 1-day event that takes place every December 23rd. And it begins in the morning, really early, and it ends the next morning, really early, because it's Christmas Eve and they have giant celebrations. They have giant celebrations all over town. So this is just a little video thing that has nothing to do with radishes, except there are radishes. I hit the middle button to play this.
No, I'll play it from up here.
Okay, go ahead. there's chopping going on through this, and there are radishes down at the bottom in the middle. So yeah, go ahead. And I think there's volume, but the radishes are there, and those are not the radishes that are carved for the festival. But there is volume to this. But this guy, these are 80 cents a piece. And so you ask for them with greens, and he puts some cilantro, some onion, and hands them to you. It's wonderful. You can eat about 12 or 13 of them. And it's a family, and they just work like crazy from about 7:30 at night until midnight, and then they stop. So, thank you, Erik. Okay. So, this is the beginning of this one. I hope I have the right little button to push here. This is the Zocalo, or the town square in Oaxaca, I think about 1953. It's an historic photo. Erik, can you kill those lights? Or do we? Okay. But 1953, and every time, I've been here four or five times, but in 1987, Oaxaca was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and they were able to make it be more like it used to be. And so they got rid of all the cars downtown. So cars don't park anywhere near here anymore. And so this is a town square. This is one street of the town square. And the trees are still there. They're giant. There's a big bandstand in the middle of this block. And imagine, so this is where the Radish Festival takes place. And the Radish Festival started in it's the 126th year is coming up, sequentially, 126th year. And I had no clue. I thought it was something that happened in the 50s or 60s, but it was started to be a festival of, let's see whether we're going to go right. Yeah, okay. I'm going to go back one a little bit. There we go. So that's the other side of the street that you just saw in that picture. And they've built all of these booths. There are over 100 contestants that are making these radish things every day, one day. And so here we go, that way. Here we go. So that's the end of the show. Erik, so if I go all the way through, hang on, let's go back. Do I have to zip all the way through? So that picture of the square, that was number one. I can just play these guys. That's not my picture. There we go. Okay. So there's that guy. And then these are the radishes that are being brought in the morning and get dropped off. What I've read is that they're up to 2.5 feet long and 6 inches in diameter. So thousands and thousands of pounds. So they're all brought in and they are delivered to the contestants starting in December 18th. That's the time they can start to carve, and then the contestants set their booths up this morning. So they start at about 6 or 7. They're judged at about 9 o'clock at night, and there's a huge, maybe 2,000 or 3,000 people who are waiting to try to get in to look at the booths. This is one of the fellows getting started setting up. So all of these are red radishes with white interiors, just like radishes we know, but they've been grown with absurd chemicals. So they're not edible. They're not edible. So each of the contestants has a theme, and they have to declare. So the little name at the top is the fellow who's making it, Roberto Ramos, and then A Day in the Plaza of the Mercado Porfirio Diaz. So that's the theme. So during the day is when I like to go because you can see everybody making them, and it's possible to actually get up close to the radishes themselves. So from here on out, we're just looking at radishes, okay? All right? So this is one of the things that has to happen. The guys squirting water, these don't last at all, and so they have to keep them. So everybody's squirting water the whole time. But they're just so detailed and so amazing. It's just endlessly interesting. And it's all radishes, but there are other things that they can use. They can use the greenery from the radishes, and they can also, there's a couple in here that have carrots built in. There's a lot of these are the scenery around Oaxaca, either the churches or the festivals, but each of the, so there's that bandstand on the left in the background. That's the center of the square. So a lot of these will be details of the one wider picture and then going back to the, she's cute. So this was a famous artist, Toledo, who died a couple years ago. So this is an homage to his art, his work in the city. Some of them are a little looser, but I don't know how they made the scales on that. It's either a pressing but they're not carved out. That's cute. Cute. Come on, there we go. So this is her work table while she's getting ready. Lots of toothpicks. This is a cactus in the works, but toothpicks, they must go through thousands and thousands of toothpicks, holding these things together. Yeah. Just so the amount of work is, it's unbelievable. So like I said, they're all red radishes, and any white has been where the radishes have been carved away. The saturation is a little high here, but it's not, yeah. I like this one. It has a sense of humor. I think whatever it is, the dragon has a little offspring over to his right there. But they're working furiously. This was still kind of the end of COVID, this last December. Some anatomical details there. There are white people with parts. And this is yeah, come on. This is the bandstand, the depiction of the bandstand, and the parade that's going to take place tomorrow, December, with all of the floats. Their palette is limited with. This is an interesting one. Look at the middle of the two campanile. There are some little details there, and there's a close-up here of that. So I'll go back to that's the detail right between that church. The towers. This is using carrots as well, so this is a phoenix arising. And once these guys get done with that, they just start to spray, spray, spray until the judging at 9 o'clock at night. Yeah. Spraying again all the time. The prize, the grand prize, is 15,000 pesos, which comes out to be about $1,000. So it's a lot of work, maybe $5 an hour or something like that. These kids. Yeah. Hmm. The wonderful thing about being able to go in the afternoon or in the late morning, there are no crowds, and it's impossible to get close at night. So this is the aftermath. This is about 6:30 the next morning. So everything's been torn down. They don't use blowers in Mexico. They use those brooms like this. So you hear whoosh, 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 rather than a giant blower and steam shovels. But this disappears in hours into dumpsters. This is at about 8 o'clock in the morning the next day, or that morning after the festival, because this is the next night on the same street, and this is the New Year's Eve festival, so all the booths, everything is taken away. So that's it. Yeah. Thanks.
Any questions?
Any questions? Mary?
So the radishes are not edible and they just like throw them in the dumpster? I was gonna ask if they.
Yeah, I'm sure they, compost them. They compost everything, but, yeah. So they're not edible, no. I didn't try, but, yeah.
Doesn't seem like the compost would be good either if they're full of chemicals.
It's Mexico. Yeah.
They have more organic, like at the beginning of the video you showed, they did occasionally, use them as a additional element in cooking. Were there any special plates that were available that day only of like?
No, it's not, it's not a big deal. I mean, it's a big deal to look at and realize how much work and how much organization there is and how much tradition, really. It's 125 years of this, every year. They didn't miss 1 year. And it was started, radishes weren't native to, it was a Columbian exchange thing. It came from China. Radishes came from China, and the Spanish brought them over. And it was an idea that they had to increase the sales at market day. Some people started to carve radishes and set them out on their little farmers market counters. And that's how it began. And then the mayor in 1890 decided, that's a great idea, let's have a contest. And so it's just grown from then. So, but there are edible radishes. There's also, I didn't include a number of pictures. There's a place off to the side where there are 10 or 12 tables, and kids can be contestants, and they can win a prize or a set of pencils or something big. So they work on real radishes, edible radishes, because you can't stop kids from eating things. So, but it's cute. It's very cute. Yeah. Is that good?
So
Gloria.
everything we saw was created that day?
From
Because there's some really intricate pieces.
yeah, the intricate things that they had to work on. They can get the radishes on the 18th of December.
Okay.
That's the first date.
Okay.
But most of the assembly
It's
takes
done-
place
okay.
right there on site, because they're hung from sticks and all
But
kinds
some
of
them look
jury rig
really-
things.
Really involved. So that's-
Yeah,
okay.
but I don't know how they keep them fresh, for that long, for a week, for 10 days. Yeah, so, okay, yeah.
How did you find out about this in the first place?
I was down in Oaxaca for fun. It's a wonderful city. It really is great. It's at 6,000 feet, and so it's the winter there. It never rains. It's always sunny every day. It rains in the spring and the summer, but we were there for vacation, and I was taking Spanish lessons that didn't take. But I was thinking, and one of the assignments I had was to go and talk to the kids at the competition. And so I just was sent to the middle of this about, in 2007, I think was the first time I went. Yeah, and it's gotten bigger and bigger and bigger in terms of people coming to look. Yeah. Greg, how am I doing time-wise? You gonna get it gone? Okay, all right. Any other questions? That's good. Okay, thank you.
That's great. All right, that's cool. Tobin is going to be our next presenter. He was born to Basque separatists in the 6th decade of the 1900s. His youth was misspent. Tobin's mother was a photographer. She routinely told him to leave her camera equipment alone. He was not a compliant child. By his adolescent years, she had given up on photography, slipping into a middle age of regret. She loaned him her equipment, Mamiya, Nikon, Zeiss. His family was of modest means, so he joined the annual staff of his high school class for access to free film and darkroom time. You can relate. And I lost my spot. Let's see. Some of his photos made it into publication, but not many, due to his teacher informing him his eye was off. It was the 80s. They wanted candid shots, not blades of grass and graffiti and purposeful, out-of-focus shots of construction sites. He attended college, where he skipped most classes and changed his major 4 times, only to drop out his senior year without 1 semester to go. With only 1 semester to go. He took his photos, no photos in college. He moved to Alaska, where he bought an F2SB Nikon, some of you will know what that is, at a pawn shop, his dream camera. He took 4 rolls and then traded it for a Fiat Spider convertible. It was a terrible trade. Now he takes photographs all the time using a Nikon once again and a Huawei cell phone. These are some of those photographs. Welcome, Tobin.
It sounded so tragic.
Well, you wrote it.
I
Now,
wrote it.
Forward,
Hi, everybody.
forward.
Back.
You said you're not going back, so forward.
So first of all, I have to say that I asked Lynn Danino to do this 7. Have you guys been coming to these for a long time? When did it start? About 8? Remember Madeira Art Gallery, the French gallery? So it was all intimate and cool. And I went on all these trips. I go, Lynn, come on. She said, no, the backlog of people. So I ended up renting a space from Rick and Jory just recently for my business. So Lynn cornered me on the street and said, I need 1 photographer, but you have to follow 2 professional photographers. So bear with me. But I have been working out a long time, and I take pretty good pictures, but I'm not a professional. So off we go. And these are pictures I took. No, not that one.
Right-hand button.
Yeah, I got that.
Yep, that's it.
These are photos I took in about the last 4 years. And I spent almost all of today and all of yesterday and the day before going through so many photographs thinking what I was going to show. No, that's the right side. Well, let's just read that thing again. It was really funny.
Hey, Eric, we need the Tobin slides.
We're working on it.
That one?
That's the first one. So when I was picking them out, I was thinking, am I here to show that I can take photographs? So I was picking all these photographs, abstractions and buildings that didn't look like buildings and just amazingly well-taken shots. And then, okay, I'm doing that right. Oh, that's me. Okay. So this is a habit I got into when I was traveling. Most places in the world have more color on their buildings, And so I would get really close and just take these abstract shots. This is just paint on a building in Nicaragua. And so this, what I'll explain here is that after filtering through, I'm not making this up, like 1,000 photographs today. After I weaned it down from like, I don't know, 5,000, I started realizing that every photograph I was picking had a person in it. They weren't these artistic shots that showed how good I was with lighting and depth of field. It was just people. This is my friend Alice. This is a party in London. And it just kind of captures like so much in one picture. Trying to get 50 pictures out of someone that's taken like thousands, it's really hard. So this is a fantastic shot, I think. It just says a lot. You can just look at it for, well, a long time. This is an Alice in Wonderland party that my friend Andrea dressed up like the rabbit. But I just love that shot. It's like she's mysterious and missing, but she's right there. This is getting a little weird. So these are caddies in the Philippines. So once a year I go to the Philippines and play rugby in this charity rugby tournament to help an orphanage. And I just thought this was the most beautiful picture of all of these women. And they're caddies. They carry your golf bags. Not ours, we did it, we didn't let them. So this goes back to like my idea that I'm a photographer. So this is a shot out of my apartment. But if you just glance at it, you can't really make heads or tails of it, which I love about photography. You know, nothing is as obvious as it seems. This is Bangkok. This is street food. And I really loved all the crickets and tarantulas and all that, but this is probably the most dramatic street food I've ever seen in my life. Has anybody ever been there, had the Cayman? This is a shot. So I lived in London recently for about 3 months, and obviously didn't have a car. And thankfully, when COVID hit, London decided to put in bike paths through the whole city. So I rented this bike for 10 pounds a month, and I rode this out. It just kind of tells a story, to me anyway. Just like, wow, field, bike, shoe. This is in Scotland, where I rented this bike, because I ride a bike, and I like to work every day. And I missed a turn, and I missed Loch Ness. And so I just went to this other loch and took pictures and told everyone that was Loch Ness. And they all thought, yeah, that was Loch Ness. This is outside the Saatchi Gallery in London. The Saatchi Gallery is this totally modern, crazy, avant-garde art. But they put this up, and yet it just gravitated all the children to play in the sand, which I thought was absolutely beautiful in that busy, dirty city of money. And this is another kind of pet thing of mine, is I love color. Can I have some of that water? A friend of mine just showed up. I'm really nervous. So I'm kind of obsessed with color. And I think this was the Puyallup Fair, and there are those moments when you can capture like so much color in one photograph. And you can't stage that kind of stuff. It just kind of falls into your lap. So this one does not have a person in it, but I do love that photograph. This, I was in the front of a double-decker bus in Edinburgh or Glasgow, one of those two. And I took a bunch of pictures while we were stopped of just people walking across the crosswalk. But this was the crazy one, because those two people don't even look like they're moving. It looks like they're just stopped in time, which I absolutely think is, that's the other thing about photography. If you don't know what you're doing like me, you take these pictures and then you look at them later and you say, oh my God, look how great I am. Look at that, wow. So I have an employee at my business, her name is Dylan, and she's my best friend. And she invited me to drag queen bingo at the Mule Tavern. And this vivacious, fabulous human being throws bingo out there, but happens to be a drag queen. But I love how this shot, because we were sitting at this table, it gets the whole message of her bag, her energy of the whole thing. That's probably one of my favorite photographs I've ever taken. So the other thing I do when I take photographs is, most of the time when you take pictures, you just snap. But the difference between pictures, my mother, rest her soul, I love her, she taught me that if you just bend a little, if you just get a little lower, if you just change your angle, you can make the most ordinary photograph into, I like they have the glasses too, into something spectacular. Okay, once again, homage to Dylan. It's weird. This is a collage, and there was something about angle again, but this speaks to like all of the pictures that I guess many of you lived through the 60s and 70s, and I just love that photograph. This is Edinburgh. I was just walking along, and there was a chair just sitting on the side of the road, and it was there for like a week. And occasionally people were, I didn't have my camera, and people were sitting, and I should have been. That's the other thing about, you know, if you have your camera with you, then that doesn't pass you by. It's always, you just, because I'll never forget that. This is a piece, I lived in this town, or part of London called Whitechapel, and I was walking down Brick Lane, and the day I went there, this was, you know, painted. I came back about 3 days later, and someone had painted the tears on. So it was like a half and half. This is my dear friend Todd, my dear friend Fred, and I never in a million years thought these two would be friends. So we were doing collage, and that's another one of the pictures that just speaks volumes about how, you know, when you expect something to end up some way and then it doesn't, then you capture it. Does anyone go to museums or art galleries and just take pictures of everything? Because that's pretty much what I do. And this is in the Albert Victoria in London, and this face just looks so, I don't know if it was, I mean, it looks like an angel. Is it not happy? Is it happy? That made the cut. It kind of touched me. This is my tea shop. This is this giant goblet that we put sort of like sample teas, free teas for people, but it has all this busy in the back, and it reminded me of that thing in Chicago. It's called the eye drop, the teardrop. So that's my homage to every tourist that ever went to Chicago, reflected in that. I love that photograph. This is a guy in Scotland. I was in Inverness, and I said, hey, I heard there's like a bigger Stonehenge, like an older one that no one goes to. And he said, yeah, there's one. I'll show you on the map. So where Inverness is where his thumb is. So you go all the way to the end, and then you take this ferry that only runs twice a day, and if you miss it, you're stuck. And it goes out to this crazy island chain, and then there is a Stonehenge there. And he said he'd take me, even if it was just me and him, because it wasn't tourist season. I just like that hand, it's like a human being taking the time to, you know, take a map out, and instead of like sending you a little, oh, here's your link. I love that. This is kind of my homage to George. And the painting on the left was made by a young girl named Isabella Uzman. She was a SOTA student. If you ever see that in color, it's absolutely amazing. It's like the best impression. Again, it's just like, and I don't adjust these photographs at all because I don't have Photoshop. I don't know how to use it. But like, that's just a light that happened. And I think when we try too hard as people thinking we can't take great pictures, sometimes the light just happens. And that's, of course, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. That's my friend Heather. And there's something about a woman smoking. I don't know what it is. But I told her I refuse to drive in your car if you smoke. And so as soon as I got out, she lit up a cigarette. So I caught that picture. Kind of just, you know, smoking's not cool, but I mean, in a way, sometimes it's okay. Just that one time when you're getting out of the car because you don't want to smell like cigarettes. So this is an interesting story. I don't know if I should tell this, but I was riding my bike back from the fake Loch Ness, and so I don't know why, but I stopped at the side of this pasture. And there were all these sheep, and I was trying to get the sheep to come over. I was like, come over here with their little lambs, and they're like, no, we're not coming over. And then this guy just stormed up to protect the sheep and did that, and I was terrified, actually, at the time. It's funny because later that night, the man at the Airbnb I was staying at, he laughed, and he had the same teeth. And I was like, no, I'm not. I almost added that one, but I only had 50 pictures. But that horse is just... Yeah, and he did not let me touch him. So this is it's like a back to the people thing. So these 5 all worked at my tea shop when they were at School of the Arts. And then this boy, Drew, we all drove up to Seattle because he had an art show, his own little first. He put a photograph in a competition, and he's like, Tobin, will you come? I said, yeah, I'll come. And so I couldn't get the picture unless I sat where they were presenting. So I just sat where they were presenting because I had to get this shot. Those are great kids. All grown up now, but back then. And I just like how everyone has a different thing going on. This is Junior. He's my friend's son, and he has never let that piece of electronic out of his hands. It's really sad. So I captured it to shame him later, to show him that when he was even a child, he still that. But I like the way the light illuminates on his face, irrespective of the fact that it's some horrible mind-numbing program. And then there's, in the corner, that photo, I'll tell you that photograph in the corner, that's a pretty good one. So this is another intern at the tea shop, and do you remember the, what was it called, the light trail, where businesses put lights in the window? So Avalon and I decided to make a Gustav Klimt sort of thing, and she was so excited, and I just caught that shot with her in front of Klimt, and she did almost all the artwork. It was spectacular. I just showed her the picture. I said, make it like this. She did. But again, like completely by accident. This is at a rugby tournament in Montana every year. And there's this huge festival that goes on. They rent a big barn and they have beer and bands. But this person is wearing I don't really remember how it worked out, but the most amazing outfit ever with lights running through it. And again, I'm not a professional, but I'll put that out there. This was at a castle, and you always think of castles in England. These are the smart, rich people, but they have a freaking unicorn right there. And I thought that was pretty odd, that they have a lion, which do not live in England, and they have a unicorn, which apparently don't live anywhere. But that was the gate to their castle. And I like this one. This is in London as well. And I was just walking along at night taking pictures of storefronts. And it's just, they have these 2 blue people, just they're barely touching. But I can feel the love there. I can see the love that they're expressing. And then right behind it says, obviously, probably by design, Love Machino. And even though it isn't a human, even though it's not a person, you can feel I can. Sure, we all can. Let's agree to that. This was right outside my apartment in London. I thought this is a pretty nice testament because this is also 3 blocks from the city of London where all the bankers live and the Richie Riches live. It was really, and there were always people here sleeping every night, someone either on the mattress or on either. It was very interesting. I like that Budweiser was in the front, like America had something to do with this, but it's kind of irony, I guess. This is a woman in Vietnam that was the hostess at a bar that I went to watch a rugby game. And I just love the color. Like when you go to bars here, it's pretty much, but there, everything has color and beauty in the color. And then follow that up, I do take pictures of food. And I've taken pictures of probably 1,000 plates of food, but that's my favorite food picture of all time. And that's what they give you for like $3. So here you go. It tells this whole story to me. So many layers. So my Huawei, my cell phone that I take a lot of pictures with now, somehow started blurring out the color. Black and white was clear, but the color was blurred out. So I cleaned the lens. That wasn't the lens. So something in the camera did that. But it's possibly been the greatest thing I've ever experienced because when I want to take pictures, this is in the tea shop. I don't know if I have a tea shop. You look this way, and the window right across from the bar is this beautiful tree. And when you look at it with its perfect focused thing, when you see a really focused picture, I think the problem is you just say, okay, I've seen that before. But when we blur the edges like Impressionism, when we blur the edges, then we have to ponder and think about what we're seeing. And that is just like the most amazing view I could ever see, I think. And I get to work there, which is great. I don't know where this is. I think it's Nicaragua, but there's a friggin' pine tree there. But I don't know how I got this shot. I woke up the next day and it was there, but it's so bizarre. You have this beautiful green monkey tree growing. The background, I don't know, some old manky hedge that they didn't water. But I love the interplay between that vibrant green and then this thing because it kind of tells the story like, well, don't worry, there will be life even when it's all brown. This is one of my favorite interns, Sam. This is a picture with him and his girlfriend. Probably touches me the most of photographs I've ever taken. Him whistling Bob Dylan, she's just sitting in the corner. That made it. And then I have this obsession actually with taking pictures of shoes when I travel. So I have so many shoe pictures because no one gets mad if you're taking pictures of their shoes. But if you actually sit down and take like 30 pictures in a row, like in the street as they're walking by, no one notices, no one cares, but you get the most amazing shots. And then the shoes actually tell a story about the people. Even though I don't know them, I make them up. You got the Vans guy, you got the high. I have hundreds of pictures of shoes. I think this is called, what do they call that when you paint like a bowl of fruit? It's called a still life. So that was a still life of me, just kind of, it was still life. And the lighting was all, and like I said, I never changed anything. So that's pretty much what I got. This is the craziest protest in London where I asked everybody, what are you protesting? And they just said everything. And it went on for months. I have a bunch of other pictures of people with rat faces saying, burn the peasants. But they were protesting the control of our world. But I've never taken a picture like this. For one moment, I actually thought like I was some sort of like war journalist, but I didn't get shot at or anything. But it was quite compelling. This is in the Tate Modern Gallery, the Tate Britain. So you have the Tate on one side and then the Tate Britain. Go to the Tate Britain too. So this is a modern artist who took all these video screens and put eyeballs of different animals on them, and they move. So when you walk by, you see it. But it had to do more with the saturation of color, because that's not color corrected. That's just what you saw when you were there. It was the weirdest place. I spent a long time in there, actually. But another photo. This is tea. So most people think tea is just like some little ground up dirt in a tea bag, but it's really beautiful. This is a tea from the Yunnan. So you have this bluing black and gold. And this is what I do for a living, so I'm going to throw that in there because I just love that picture. This was a complete accident. I don't know how this happened, but it was completely dark. And this is my friend's apartment on the Thames. He lived in the shitty part of London. And at one moment, it was all dark, like on the left there. It was overcast, and then something happened. So that whole circle is just like the light making its way this way. So it started over there, so I went and grabbed my camera, and I got that shot. And that's pretty much dirty London right there. It's not all. And then this is just color. This is the Philippines, too, and you go in and you get like a cup of ice, and then they put all that stuff in there. It's the most with beans and everything, but it's the most random thing you've ever seen. But they're just so into color in other parts of the world. I mean, I'm not saying America's really drab and boring, but it just seems like when Rick said in Mexico, you go to Mexico, it's just there's color everywhere. Like when people have nothing, they just paint. They put color where they have nothing. I guess think to a certain extent, not to get on a freaking soapbox, but I think because we all think we already have everything, we just forget the color. Because that's some color, I think. And I don't like that. I tried that stuff. It's horrible. It's like a boba tea with kidney beans and okra and stuff. This was at a party I went to in London, and the thing I liked about parties in England versus parties in America is that everyone dresses up. This was in the smallest apartment, the tiniest little place. Not one person showed up without a costume, and look how like the curve of her body and how she's just her arms up. She's having the time of her life, but she's in like right next to the trash bin in the back of this tiny apartment with that beautiful Genie Jack. And then I cut a lot of these pictures out, but this one I couldn't do it because I kept thinking that the little fellow on the right was going to end up being a computer guy someday. Like he had his laptop open. But I chatted with them for a while. I don't speak Tagalog, but we had a good chat. I have so many pictures of children that I had to cut out. This is the other thing they have there is this is in Glasgow, and they don't, we have public art, and so our public art is commissioned by someone, and then they get a grant, and it's paid. These people just go paint stuff. And as far as graffiti goes, that's probably the coolest thing. So how they drew the texture, like her nose is almost like beaten in from, you know, you can see how disfigured it is, but that's just the stone. But he knew, the artist knew to paint right there. You know, that's where he started her face. That was really, really cool picture. And then this, I don't know. I took it, I was drinking pastis one day, probably not paying attention. I couldn't figure out for the life of me, like, who those three guys were and where are they? Are they on the boat? Are they on this side? And then that color of the sky was because I overexposed the photograph by accident. But it's just like these random three faces, so I like that too about photographs. I had a bunch of those where it looked like people had three legs because you took it from a certain angle, or it looked like someone had two heads, but this was very strange. If you go to London, always order French liquor because it's cheapest, just so you know. And then these are two of my best friends, and it goes back to like, so my father-in-law years ago, when I was married, he told me that it's not a photograph if there's not a person in it. Okay, so I said, yeah, right. So I've been taking abstract and pictures of buildings and pictures of blades of grass. And then what I realized when I was going through all these photographs I've taken, I picked all the photographs with people in them. Like when I'm doing because you had 80, 40, you got to go down to 50s. So that's my friend Bruce and Wags, and they're just, that was at a rugby tournament in Montana. I just love that photograph. It's like unabashedly just nonsense. Went backwards. We're almost done. This is my bad habit at my house. I always have this table and I just throw shit on it, and some art that I bought and this picture of Christopher Walken, and I think there's some beauty to this. Like, I know I have to clean the table up. I mean, if you came to my house, I have like 100 pictures of tables full of shit, but I have to capture like where did all this random stuff go, and then later you can just take the picture and pull it out and say, oh, you did that, and oh my God, what's that? But anyway, that's pretty much me on a table. Yeah. And then this was a still life I took 2 nights ago. I was laying in bed. Well, it was actually 3 nights ago, because I moved my bed. But I was just like sitting there, hanging out. You know, I'm not really on the phone too much or whatever. Well, that's not true. But I was just sitting there and I had my phone out, and then I just turned to grab that glass of really brilliantly Aligote from the Loire, and I was going to drink that wine, and I just stopped. I couldn't drink it. I had to get that picture. And I think that even though I'm not a professional photographer, none of us really are, I think. But that's, you know, just grab those little parts in your own house, so that years from now you can like show your grandkids. This is what I used to do. Yeah, that was me. I slept with white wine. This is from a visit last week to Seattle. My friend had a big giant boat, and once again I had the phone, and I went, poor decision making, out on the paddle boat at night to get this picture of the city. So if this picture's in focus, you can see every single skyscraper of Seattle, which, by the way, if you haven't been there lately, there are so many. And then we're in North Lake Union. But with just the fact, and there's probably a little something on the lens, but just with the fact that the camera doesn't focus. So what I see is I see like a whole different idea of what Seattle is. It's not all these sharp buildings of separation. It's just this big, beautiful, massive color and light. And that's that. Oh, and then this is my homage to my photographer, Zen Master. And I know Rick and Jory know him. So Steve was, you know, I had 2 best friends, I guess. He passed recently. And I found this today by accident. I wasn't even going to add it, but do you see that photograph right there? If you go across the Bridge of Glass and then you take a left, you can stand right where that is, but I guarantee in a million days you will never see it just like that. So do you know what I'm talking about? Because there's the thing. So that was Steve Campanian. I thought I'd just throw him in there because he taught me a lot about photography, like so much, because he was really good. But anyway, that's my presentation. And next time I'll do a travelogue. About what? Sure, why not? Dim the lights?
Are you
shooting film to do the black and whites, or did you?
Pardon?
To get the black and white photos, are you shooting film in your camera, or are you just?
Well, okay, so I forgot to tell you this. At the same time that the color went out on my Huawei cell phone, the black and white worked. So I was kind of forced into a little black and white world there.
Oh, really?
But I do shoot a lot in black and white. I use a Nikon point and click, I don't use film cameras anymore. It's just, yeah, it's just too cost prohibitive.
So you just fiddle with it in your phone?
Pardon?
In your Huawei, in your phone, you can do that sort of.
Right, you can switch from monochrome to color.
Okay.
Well, there you go. Great question.
Let's see. Lynn left me some notes, so let's make sure we do it right. We limited you to 5 minutes of questions. That worked perfectly. Good. I'm to remind you about that, and that the next tripod is June 16th, and will feature Tom Cordry, John Carlton, I think you're here somewhere, and Bill Kapinz, all three doing AI. Ooh, and we're all anxious to hear about that. Artificial intelligence. And I'm to remind you that the donations that you made at the door are really helpful to help pay, to give Erik a tip for doing some tech for us and to pay the rent to use this space. So thank you for contributing. And I'm also supposed to remind you that these are being recorded, so they're on YouTube. If you missed this one, then you can watch it on YouTube, or you can watch the ones you haven't seen before, obviously. So now I'm going to try and introduce my friend Scott Waeschle, and it means that I need to find what you wrote to me earlier today. Right. Okay, wait. I just need to find it. It's in here somewhere. If not, you know what, Scott? I know Scott likes to play outdoors. I remember that line. And I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Scott and I'll just ad-lib this. Scott and I used to teach art together at Charles Wright Academy in, I guess it's Tacoma, UP or whatever. And we taught 8th grade, and I taught 6th grade, and we shared a little art closet was our office. We had one chair. So while he taught, I got the chair, and while I taught, he got the chair. And email was just becoming a thing. And so we took turns with this slow email computer. It was a lot of fun. I appreciate it. And then we went our separate ways, and we went on to different jobs. And Scott's been teaching for a bunch of years down at Lakes High School. He teaches photography and digital photography. And I did all kinds of teaching. And we got together tonight for dinner, and it was fabulous because we used to take our kids camping when they were like this big. We haven't done that. Now they're all grown up and they live in other places. It's like total time warp. So I'm really thrilled that Scott was willing to come and share some of his outdoor adventure slides with us. Welcome, Scott.
The one thing that is a big part of that intro that she missed was that I just like to play. So that's sort of where this whole scenario starts. So let me put on my glasses so I can see you maybe, and we'll see how this goes.
If you want to try the microphone.
Oh yeah, sorry.
I know you have
I'm
to
gonna have
take
to
your
lift
voice
it up. Does that work better for you guys? Am I being mic'd? Okay, I'll see if I can stand near it. I have a teacher voice and I really project, and so I hope I don't blow you out. I apologize because I'm not used to using one of these. It's my senior year of college, and I'm traveling to the Cayman Islands to study marine ecology. And I'm in a bare hotel room, not much there, in Miami, and I'm holding a Zeiss Icon Contessa camera, if any of you guys have ever seen one of those. It's a very cool camera. My grandfather bought it in the early 50s in Stuttgart, Germany, where he grew up, near where he grew up. He died when my father was in high school, well before I was born. And my father gave it to me when I was in 10th grade high school photography class. And I was opening it up. It had a worn brown leather case. You'd peel it open, push a little button, and then the lens, that was so neat, it would pop open with a bellows, and then the lens just sat there. And it was a rangefinder camera. It was really, really kind of a cool piece of equipment. And I was trying to load film in it before I went to this marine ecology class. And I fumbled the camera. And it slipped out of my hands. I reached for it. I tried to grab it, and all I heard was this sharp crack as it hit the concrete floor, and the metal bent. And I felt this just, my heart sunk, and I just felt shame, because this was a family heirloom that had sort of been passed down to me, and it was now in complete wreckage on the floor. And I reached down and I picked it up and I looked at it for a little bit, and then I just put it in the wastebasket. Yeah. So then we're going to fast forward a few months later, I graduated from college, and my father surprised me with a brand new OM1 camera. And that camera from Olympus became sort of the foundation of my work as a photographer. And I used to use photography as a tool for my art. I would consider myself a painter before I consider myself a photographer. But now we're going to fast forward about 25 years, and we're on the Grand Canyon. And the thing that my introduction didn't say is I spent years as an outdoor guide and instructor, and I spent a lot of time in the wilderness. And I take my camera with me a lot to capture those things. So this is red wall limestone, second day into the Grand Canyon. These 1,000-foot cliffs going up, that's our group of rafts. And I got to figure out how to push the button, okay? There we go. Okay. This is Red Wall Cavern. Red Wall Cavern is this huge cave carved out by the river on the Colorado. And it's bigger than a football field of this sand area. And this is a montage I put together with a bunch of different photos with a group of my friends doing yoga in there. And if you go past the person in blue down the little hill, you get down to the rafts. Well, I was on my first trip to the Grand Canyon with my mom, who was like 67, and my son, who was 12. And I reached into the raft to grab my bright pink ammo can, waterproof box that I carried my camera in and lenses, and I picked it up, and as I picked it up, it popped open. I had not put the latch shut, and I watched as time sort of stood still for me. It was like slow motion. 2 lenses in my camera just went into the river. And I just reached down, I picked them up really quickly, and I just stood there and poured water out of each lens. And so that was the second camera that I destroyed. This is a few years later on my second trip down the Grand Canyon. My friend Dave, he's leaping off of this cliff into this cliff into about 8 foot deep pool of water. This is a canyon called Silver Grotto, and it takes sort of rock climbing skills to get up in here. You need a rope, you need teamwork to help each other get up here. And I was up here, a strong group, and he jumped in. And after I took this picture, I had this new dry bag that had a special Ziploc piece on it. It was really bomber. It's made to keep camera gear dry or whatever, and I zipped it all shut. And I tossed it down to my son in that pool. And as it hit the water, the bag popped open, tipped over, and filled up with water. And I had a brand new digital Canon camera, like a $1,000 body, And my breath was just taken away, and I just went, oh, and I leaped into the water after it. My son was picking it up, going, uh-oh. And I spent a bit of time, right? You can't really see it. There's a little puddle of water off the shoulder. I just sat with some time on the shore there, just holding the camera and this wreckage that I just destroyed, looking at it and realizing that I'm just going to have to sear all this beauty and this amazing things just into my brain because I didn't have a camera anymore. So that was the third camera that I destroyed, okay? So now this is taken just 2 years ago. during the pandemic, I was back down the Grand Canyon. It was my 5th trip down the river. And this is my youngest son, Jack, and he's leaping from the place that I took the photos into the water. And I'm standing at the spot where I was holding the wreckage of my broken camera, you know, sort of getting a different sense of perspective. And so now what I want to do is just show you some pictures from the rest of the Grand Canyon for a little bit, the parts that I had never photographed earlier on, okay? And also I want to share some images just of adventure and different things that I'm passionate about over the last 10 years. So we'll quickly go through. So this is further downstream on the Grand Canyon, and I like to take a lot of night photography. I do a lot of stuff, and so this was a composite of, I took a series of photos of the canyon at sunset when you could still see detail on the rocks, left the camera on a tripod, and then took pictures at night over a period of 3 hours to get the streaks of the stars making that thing, and then put them together so that I had the sky from one photo and the land from another, so you see some detail. This photo is doing the same sort of thing, but missing the figure, the picture. So this is what it would look like if you took it at midnight when you didn't get the detail in the darks. This is pointing directly at Polaris, the North Star, so you see the circle of the stars. This was about a 4-hour photograph, and you can see I caught one shooting star going off to the right. This is Nankoweap. It's a very famous place on the Grand Canyon, and it was about 2 in the morning with the full moon up. You can see Pleiades, the constellation above the rocks on the right there. And it's actually a composite made of about 6 photos because it's a panorama, and you can't get those kind of pictures with one shot. So it's a series of photos that are then stitched together. And each picture took about 25 seconds to take so that you can expose for the stars and see the light. But it was so bright. And then there's also whitewater. And whitewater is one of my favorite passions. I'm a whitewater kayaker and rafter and a guide. And I canoe wild rivers all over North America. And this is one of the biggest waves on the river. It's on a rapid called Hermit. And my buddy's in an 18-foot raft going over that. One picture I don't have of this is my son, shortly after this, came downstream on an inflatable air mattress through the same place. One of the things about photography is you can tell stories, but photography, one of the problems I find with photography is photography captures an instant in time and it's frozen, and it may not have any context or any surrounding port, and there's things that are missing. You get a little isolated image, but you don't see the background. You don't see a lot of stuff that happens with it, or if you do, it's too far away to see some of those things. So I shoot a lot of what are called joiners, and I sat in this spot for a half an hour while my friends were eating lunch and landing in this place called Matkadamiba Canyon on the Grand Canyon. And the same person is, in multiple places walking through. If you just see my friend Dietz in the bottom there walking, you don't get any context for it. But if you see him there, and you see him there, and you see him there, and you get the sense of the whole scene. And so it's a collage that I sort of stitch back together, and it's photography as you would deal with memory, because in a memory, it's not linear. It's not like a video. In a video, it goes from the start and plays forward, or it goes back. You can only go that way. But in a memory, you can jump anywhere into that experience. And that's what this is. This is a series of photographs of that experience over a half an hour. So it's like a memory. And every time you look at a different thing, it's a different point of view, it's a different thing happening. And so I tend to do this a lot, and I do this a lot with my students. I teach my students how to do this. One of the things that I'm most passionate about is whitewater kayaking. And so on the weekends, or even I tell my students when it's raining out and it's really good whitewater, I'm sorry, you'll have a sub. I go whitewater kayaking. And this is on the Toutle River, which runs off of Mount St. Helens, just south of here. A buddy of mine running a rapid, and I stop and bring a camera along and take a lot of interesting photos. This picture, when you get a Pineapple Express that comes through Washington, I'm out kayaking because 2 or 3 times a year it rains enough and this one wave forms on the Nacelle River in southwestern Washington at this little fishing weir. And this sort of sums up what it feels like to get on this. It's a giant surf wave that just forms only for a few hours on certain days of the year. And we quit work, we skip our activities, and we go there and we get in our kayaks and we catch this wave. And it's pouring rain in this photo, and Chris is just sitting there blissed out on this wave. Another thing photography has done is it sort of taught me how to see a little better. And this is on the Tilton River, and the Tilton River is on the way to White Pass, and it's this amazing canyon, and the only way to see anything in that canyon is you have to be in a kayak. It's this hard, you can't really hike to it or walk to it. And there's this one place where there's this tree that hangs out from the cliff, and occasionally the light hits it just right in the wintertime at low angle. And it's not easy. So I knew this was there. I brought my camera along, and I got out ahead of my friends, hiked along the base of the river and up this cliff so that I could get to this point of view. And then my friends came through, and I just set and framed the photograph, and I waited for my friends to come through so I could get photos. And I took pictures of everybody going down the river, but this is the one that really captured the light and the joy of the experience. This is on the Hump Tulips River in the Olympics. And it's this beautiful river, and it's, again, the only way you can see this is by kayaking. It's too hard to hike into. And it's this amazing little place where this waterfall from this side creek pours into this canyon. And to get this shot, I got out of my canyon in this little edge of this rapid and climbed up this cliff that's all mossy and slippery and hung onto a devil's club and took this photo of my friends. You know, it's just, it's an amazingly green, gorgeous place. I do a lot of trips up into British Columbia and Canada to kayak and canoe and do wilderness trips, and this picture represents a 4-hour hike with my kayak up and down a mountain to kayak this one little stretch of river. We had carried our boats down into this gorge to run this river. This is a 25-foot waterfall slide. We did this, and as you go through that gap and go around the corner, there's this giant log jam, and the river goes into these sheer cliffs, and you can't get out. So we found this one place to climb out, and it took us 2.5 hours to hike out of the canyon with our kayaks on our back through Devil's Club. It was a great day. You know, it was a great day, and we got in about 100 yards of paddling. This was a few weeks ago on Canyon Creek. This is a woman I paddle with, and she's running this waterfall on Canyon Creek. And again, you know, this is an example of you just get a simple shot of the action and what's happening, but you don't see the whole context of what the day was like or what the experience was like. And she had a nice clean run through here. I ended up stuffed under the rock. I didn't do it real right. And, but I spent a half an hour taking photos of my friends through it, and this is what it actually looks like. So here's a joiner I did, and you can see at the center of the photo, she's in the photo in her kayak. That's the same photo I just showed you. But this shows you all the support, the people that are there, the safety boats that are at the bottom, you know, dealing with. You see a series of her and 3 kayaks going through the rapid, popping up, coming out, different people starting it at different points, running it. You can see that it's snowing. It was snowing that day. And you get a sense. And so this is why I like to shoot joiners like this, because it really gives you the context. Here's another one. This one's... I'm actually in this picture because this is I stood on a rock after running this Class 5 rapid on the Salton River, and this run only runs twice a year because it's dam release. They let water out of the dam on the Salton River. This runs into the Skykomish north of Seattle, and it's a great party for all of us boaters because the water runs for about 2.5 hours. It's like they turn the spigot on the dam, the water runs downstream, and you have to catch the water as it's going, because if you're too late, the water will dry up and you're stuck and you have to hike out. So, but this is a montage of about 10 photos. I took pictures of my friends. There might be 2 or 3 people coming through this rapid at a time, but I took all the pictures from the same location. So then using Photoshop, I was able to just cut a hole in the master picture I had and let the other person show up when they were right there because everything lined up. And then another friend took a photo of me when I ran through it earlier, and so I put myself in the picture, and I'm over here in the corner about to get swept into a hole. But it worked out. Actually, the guy in the orange kayak coming through ran over me and kicked me back into the eddy and kicked me out, so he did me a service. I also climb mountains and rock climbing. This is, if you've ever been to Yosemite National Park, this is El Capitan. It's the tallest vertical cliff in sort of North America. It's 3,000 feet from the bottom to the top. It's been climbed in under 2 hours by Alex Honnold. Some of you guys may have seen the movie Free Solo about him and Tommy Caldwell climbing that thing. This is a composite of about 15 photos because you can't get this whole scene in one photo, and I shot it, and it's all sandwiched together so you can see it. And I went down here with my son when he was in college, and he and I climbed this thing. He has climbed this thing 5 times. My son's on the right, and I'm here. You can't get a picture on the wall in one photo and show this experience. So if you look at this picture closely, my son Keenan there, I'm there, and then my friend Dave is up climbing. He's leading on the rope up there, and then you see the buttress of the nose. We were on the wall for 5 days. We hauled all our camping gear. We even hauled a case of beer up there. You can see my son's on the belay taking a break, drinking a beer. He's got a Tecate there. And it's just an amazing, amazing place that is a story in itself about climbing these things, but that was a great experience. This is my youngest son, and we're climbing and bouldering in Leavenworth. And one of the things about photography is you're dealing with light, and it's tough sometimes in lighting situations to get a photograph that's well balanced in one shot. So I had my camera on a tripod. I took a picture and I exposed the picture for the whitewater on Icicle Creek. And then I changed the settings on the camera, didn't move the camera, put a flash behind the rock there, took a second photo of my son climbing, otherwise he would have been completely black and dark, and then lit him up, and then you just put the 2 pictures together, just the same picture, but you basically take an exposure for one setting and one for the other, and you get a more interesting photo. This is the summit of the top of Mount Waddington, which is the tallest peak in British Columbia, in the Coast Range. And we got helicoptered into the glacier, sort of in the middle, and then came through that notch and got up to this point. It was a wonderful experience climbing with some world-renowned climbers. I climbed with one guy, Martin Zabalita, who's the first Spaniard to climb Mount Everest. He was just recovering. He'd lost all 10 toes the year before on a frostbite event, and so he was just trying to sort of relearn to walk and climb. And we got to this point, and we didn't go any further because the top of the mountain was avalanching and falling off because it had gotten so warm. So I took a beautiful panorama picture, and we turned around and went back down. And I climbed that with my eldest son, too. A little closer to home, you might recognize that, Mount St. Helens. And sometimes I just take off in the middle, so this was in the middle of the night. I just drove from Olympia down here to Johnstone Ridge before they closed it for the season and got this photo, and I caught one of the Leonid meteors in that picture in the top. You can see a little meteor zipping through. This is looking over at the summit of Mount Olympus on the Bailey Traverse, and this is something I do that really ticks off my family. My wife can attest to that. They're sleeping, and then I'm running around at night taking photos, and with a flash. And so they're inside the tent sleeping, sound asleep, and then I stick the flash inside the tent and go, pop! And now it's daylight. And they're like, what happened? And sorry. And then I just pull the camera out. And that's how I lit the tent up, with the flash. Or sometimes I'm doing star photos and the camera goes click, 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 click for like 6 hours. And they don't really like that sound. Can you do that over there, please? That's an example of doing one of those shots. So I took probably 300 photos that night, taking photos. This is a little bit different on the thing, and what you've got is, I took a photo where the tent was lit up with a flash. I stood there, hit myself with a flash. Then I ran around with a red flashlight and lit up the ground. And then I took photos, 30-second photos, all night long when the Perseid meteor showers were out. And then I picked the 17 shots that had meteors in it, and then I sandwiched all of that information together to create this image. Because there's no way, to get a still image of meteor, you're not going to get the whole showers from the night. Again, same thing, light riding, playing with a red headlamp. I did a little self-portrait, I'm in there, and then it represents 2 hours of the stars going through the sky until the moon came up, and that's on Mono Lake in California. This was not too long ago on the Owyhee River in southeastern Oregon, the Milky Way, and you can see Neowise, the comet that came through a couple years ago. And it's right there near the horizon line. One of the things I like to do is I drive around in my car or my van, and I just find barren, out-of-the-way places and spend the night taking photos of beautiful places. And it's great to travel alone when you do that, because then you don't have to wake anybody up when you're doing these kinds of things. One of my favorite places on Mosquito Creek in Washington, on the Washington coast in the national park, the crescent moon and this headland. So that was as the moon was rising and the sun was going down. And then this is a few hours later at the same place. And it's the Milky Way, and you see the bioluminescent on either side of that headland. And it's an amazing campsite right there, and you can just camp right on the beach, and the tide comes right in. Now, that was a beautiful night in the fall, like in September, but I was also there a month ago, and there was like 3 inches of rain that fell on us, so it wasn't so nice. We never saw the stars. Pacific Northwest, this is up the Dosu-Wallops River in the Olympics coming under Hood Canal, and just working with a little slow shutter speed, and these are beautiful places. And you know, this is attesting to what the other photographer said, just about getting low, changing your angle, finding a different point of view. This was taken really low with a wide-angle camera, so you could get the river in the perspective. Only a lot of my pictures don't have people in them. I'm not that kind of a photographer. I take pictures of waterfalls. And this is Crater Lake. Getting up, we were camping there, and I got up with my kids and my daughter and went up here at you know, before sunrise and caught the sunrise coming up. And then this is then sepia toned, edited so that you get it looking old-timey. And then again, this is, I like to drive 2-lane highways by myself, so then nobody gets upset when I stop and pull over by the side of the road because I see a cool irrigation equipment, and I stop and take a picture, just, you know, and try to avoid being getting hit by a car, you know, just outside the margin, you know, whatever you call that, the median. This is, again, Norwegian Memorial on the Olympic coast. Maybe some of you have hiked there on the wilderness beaches, you know, as the sun was going down. Just a beautiful place, dealing with the pattern of trees. I also take a lot of pictures of birds. You know, this was taken out my car window in a national wildlife refuge down in Oregon. Your car actually acts like a blind, and the birds will get closer to you than if you're out walking. A little sandpiper. The ones before were scarlet ibis. This is a unit I'm teaching my students right now to work with reflections, and I use this in that slideshow. It's a egret at Malheur Wildlife Refuge. And one of my favorite shots, this is an avocet. And I took that picture driving through this wildlife refuge in Utah. I think, Janet, you were sitting right next to me, and I just did this out the window of the car. This was just in the fall, and this is one of also my favorite places. That's that beach that had the giant stars. But this is, I also like to tell stories this way, with making pictures that are diptychs or tell a story. So this is, the left is where I was standing. Those are the trees with the light coming in. And then if you turn 180 degrees the other way, looking over the edge of the cliff down, I snuck up on a few sea otters that were just floating in this little eddy in this backwater on the ocean. And so I got that picture of the sea otter. And then I do a lot of creative stuff where I play with Photoshop and mess with images. And so this is my kids, my daughter and my son, pretending they're walking on water, leaping in when we had all those fires a couple years ago up on Ross Lake. And I had a picture of more of those sandpipers flying, and I just felt like they were flying, and I threw some birds in there. And you know, it's playing with these kinds of images. This is one of my favorite ones, and I call this, sometimes the aliens throw you back. The thing on the right is Devil's Tower. A lot of you guys may have seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Okay, that was where the giant alien spaceship comes down, Richard Dreyfuss, et cetera, and the people are abducted. I took a picture. It's a little bit hard to see the way it's lit right now, but there's lightning coming down right below my son in the sky. So I was watching this lightning storm come in, and I took this picture. But earlier in the summer, I had taken a picture of my son leaping off of a cliff. That's him, the alien's throwing him back. And I put those together in Photoshop and changed the tonalities a bit. And I do a lot of assignments and creative things like this with my students, trying to get them to be creative. About 5 years ago, I had both knees replaced. And I wore myself out with all my adventures. And I could only walk the dog around the block. I was really concerned about the fact, would I actually be able to keep doing and getting to some of these amazing places that I like to go and take pictures. And so I made this collage based on that experience. So that's my skeleton from my scan before I had the knees replaced. And there's no cartilage in those knees. And I'm standing on a hunk of moss, and that's a grove of trees halfway up to Mount Constance on the steepest trail in all of Washington. And it's this straight trail that goes straight up, and there's this little plateau halfway up, and there's this amazing grove of big old growth trees. And the mist was cool, and I got this great picture of the woods. And so for me, this picture sort of represented, is this what I'm going to be doing? Am I ever going to get to a place like that again? Will I be able to walk? I didn't know. I was only 55 when I had both knees replaced, but it's been amazing. I am fitter than ever, and it's amazing what surgery can do. But during the healing process, I spent 2-3 months sitting in my living room looking out the window, and I noticed things that I'd never noticed before. So I was there all day, and I just started watching a lot more birds, and I would take pictures of birds that I'd never seen before, warblers, yellow warblers in my backyard, or hummingbirds. And these are shot through the glass window, my picture window that looks on my backyard and my garden. And so you can get some amazing photos just in your backyard. You don't have to go to exotic places to see beauty. And I also started taking pictures of flowers on my kitchen table. So these are flowers, peonies that I've grown. I'm waiting, these are almost ready to bloom. I'm gonna take a whole nother series of photos. And then they became the series for when I realized I made a goal of myself that I took these photos. When I was able to stand up and actually stand in front of my easel, I was gonna paint these. And now I'm painting paintings that are, I got this series going where the paintings are 5-6 feet tall, huge, of flowers like this. And so here's an example. There's one of the pictures taken at the kitchen table, and then there's the painting of it. So, painting is another. I just finished a giant painting for my sister of a different peony. And I started playing with flowers, and just because I couldn't do much, so I could only go to the kitchen table from the chair, and my knees were all iced up. And so I started just taking pictures of flowers in my kitchen. And, beauty is all around us, and sometimes you can get amazing things just, in your backyard. So a bunch of flowers or a single flower, a dahlia. So here are 3 things I sort of learned through my photography career. I've learned to see light better, and I've learned to appreciate the magic moments and the varied tones. And I've been able to see the world through the eyes of the camera a little bit better. I've learned how to better tell stories with my images, but most importantly, how to better hold on to my camera so far. So, thank you.
Questions? Comments?
Yeah.
How long does it take to stitch together one of those photos?
Like those collages, like the one of the waterfalls. Yeah. Maybe a class period or 2. Like an hour and a half, 2 hours, not too bad. I mean, I play it and I do them. I feel really fortunate is that I get paid to do that because I take the photos and I bring those in, and then I do them as a demo while my students are working on things and show them how to do them. So I'm doing them in class and I'm showing the process while on the big screen, and they can work on different things, but I'm teaching photography and I get paid to do some creative stuff. I just took a bunch of new photos of this really amazing red tree peony that my sister-in-law grew. I asked her, could I have a couple of those? And I took more photos of them on the kitchen table, and maybe next week I'll find time to edit them in class. We'll see.
Cool.
Any other questions? Well, thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I guess we're done. Lights, please. Yeah, look. You're gonna take care of this? Thank you. Thank you.